Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of the Reddit League show. We were in Ukraine this week. We've only got two divisions still going at it in the regular season, but we do have some playoffs to talk about. My name is Zotomo, as always, and I am joined by Calamity.
Hello.
And our guest this week is Bombadil. So we are in the three corners of the world. How are you doing?
Doing very good. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, let's just jump right in. And yeah, Calamity, probably not the most exciting thing for you in terms of what you want to be in a position, but you are in the Division 1 relegation playoff against Verdoc. It is a world map. Are you guys playing on single map or is it best of 3?
It's best of 3.
I forget. It is a best of 3. So maybe you can mention what the 3 maps are, or do we not know yet?
We do know.
Okay.
It will be Poland, Jordan, and Europe.
Okay, Poland, Jordan, and Europe. Interesting. Yeah. So Bombadil, what do you think about this matchup on those 3 maps?
I like the best of 3 format and the diversity with it a little bit because it will reduce some of the volatility, I think. Sometimes when you have in any of those particular maps, just a one-off game, it could be enough for like one weird round or 1 or 2 weird rounds to really throw a wrench or even prove some upsets. But spreading it out among those 3, yeah, I think the better player hopefully will kind of come out on top, even though I guess at this point, they're pretty close to skill level as it is. So yeah, it'll be good to see how they pan out, but I'm interested in at least the first one.
Yeah, looking at your guys' scores, Verdoc was pretty much at the bottom of the Division 1 table the entire season, Calamity, and he just kind of got lucky towards the end there, picking up a few points, and he's just 1 point above you. But if you look at the actual stats, you are the clear favorite in pretty much every category, except for the one that matters, I guess, in points.
Well, yeah, I had, I suppose, a bit of an unlucky season. With everything being as close as it was, I mean, 4th to 10th being 3 points apart, really anyone could have been anywhere in that division apart from the top 3, of course. And, well, as I've mentioned last week, I think, was it last week? I don't remember. I mentioned it in one of the match casts for sure, that I had lost all previous 3 games to Verdoc, but I actually had a better score than Verdoc in all of the maps we're going to be playing in the playoff this season. So maybe the chances aren't looking that bad. As I said, still haven't beaten him one-on-one in a game so far. So we'll see. I do think if I can just, play my game and not make any stupid mistakes, then I have at least a decent chance to win 2 of the 3 maps. It's really going to depend on the seed as well, I think. I feel pretty confident about Jordan, actually, but especially Europe and Poland do have a lot of areas where in Poland you can just end up like in a very rural area with no information whatsoever, and Europe still has a couple of countries that I'd just rather not play, such as Greece, for example, or some of the Balkan countries. So as long as we don't get any of those, I'm probably going to be able to do quite well. But we'll see if it's going to be enough to beat Verdoc.
Definitely a very interesting matchup. It is not going to be taking place this coming week because it will be taking place at the same time as the championship playoffs in another week. But we did want to talk about it here now because we will spend most of our time talking about the championships next week. So good luck to both of you in those 3 maps. This is the first time we're showcasing the best of 3 playoff kind of style, so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in that format. So moving to Division 2 then, and they actually had a regular season matchup in the Ukraine. We played Russia, now we're in Ukraine. So plenty of Cyrillic and rural middle of nowhere. And yeah, not too bad of scores though across the board in this one, Bombadil.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a Division 2, this high up the table as well, you do expect to see decent performances, even on a map like Ukraine that's notorious for being relatively difficult, especially compared to some of the other maps we played this season. So I'm impressed with the overall, I'd say, high average of scores. There still is quite a bit of diversity with a few of the players dipping down into the 1600s, but for the most part, they've done pretty solid overall. So a couple close matchups too, which are pretty exciting to see, especially with the context of the end of the season coming to the close. But overall, yeah, very impressive from Division 2 here.
Yeah, Calamity, maybe the one standout score is Latemp's 128, who probably just clicked through it just to click through it. I'm not sure that score could even be achieved if you're trying any kind of seriously.
Yeah, we've already talked about that last week. You've apparently just forgotten, so I won't need to mention it again. But yeah, looking at the other results, Ice's 23K is very impressive, considering the season he's had so far. And I don't know if he just put a little bit of practice into Ukraine, because it doesn't seem like the country to me where you can just go in no practice and pull out 23,000 points. But maybe he did. But compared to everyone else, a bit of a standout score there. And well, it didn't have the best performance, so maybe wouldn't have even needed that many points, but it helps him out a little bit at least. LCN a bit unfortunate, only losing by not even 1,000 points, just 999. And he could have definitely needed those points as well, fighting against the relegation. But we've kind of got a similar story there with his direct opponent for that spot, and Wordblocker, who also lost by less than 1,000 points. So at least they're kind of similar in that aspect. No bonus points for either of them as well. And yeah, other than that, Shumi Max, as that matchup kind of always is, a very high-class matchup. And yeah, just better end for Shumi there, which unfortunately ends Max's, even though they were slim to begin with after last week, ends his promotion hopes there.
Yeah, so as I look at the Division 2 table, pretty much everybody at the top kept on winning, which means nobody moves except for Latemp's, who jumps down to 6th, with the real Clyde moving up into 5th. So yeah, some very good scores, but kind of as expected from a lot of the top players, means nobody moves or shuffles really a whole lot. But you can see that at least for that relegation fight, it is still pretty tight between LCN and Ordbucca there, Bombadil.
Yeah, and it's exciting at least to see some of the close fights come all the way down to the last week, because we are at the point in the season where, like you said, a lot of the tables are starting to be settled, especially that mid-table spot. In fact, on one hand, I'm almost, I guess, a little bit happy for Max that he wasn't in real contention to be in the relegation zone, because with a close loss like he had, where you're really not that far away from a win, it's at least a nice consolation that you didn't really lose too much over it in the grand scheme of things, with respect to the place in the season. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see with this final week coming up, how the last, I guess, decisive positions shake out.
Yeah, Calamity, the top 4 are our top 4. I don't think Clyde can move into that spot, but they are within 3 points of each other, which means there could be a slight bit of shuffling happen around there. They also all have 2 perfect games as well.
Yeah, it's technically still possible for Clyde to move in there, but he would need a perfect game, and it's possible on IntersectionGuessr, but it's not looking super likely. So we are probably, as you said, going to be looking at our top 4 to fight for those promotion spots, and between them very close for sure. Snorlax with a bit of an advantage there, so you should be pretty safe in the top 2. But Shumi, Renata, and Barry all very, very close together, and could really be any of those 3 who grabs that secure spot. Shumi does have that 1 point over the other 2, and we'll talk about their matchups in a bit, and we'll see who they're going to be playing and who's most likely to come out on top of that. And yeah, then we have pretty much 3 players there in the middle who are probably just, gonna take the last week casually. And that's, it's part of the reason, the main reason why a world map is in week 11 was for the playoffs in Division 4 and 5. But part of the reason is also that it is a map you don't have to practice too much. So if you're already in a position in the table in the last week, which is quite likely that, you can't really gain or lose much, then at least it's a map where you don't need to put in a lot of hours. So you should still be able to put up a decent score to not, impact the competition too much by, not trying. And yeah, we'll see what these people in the middle of the table can mount on that map. And yeah, back in sort of the lower half of the table, we've got pretty much two 1-against-1s with Ordbok against LCN and Guelo against Ice for that, for whoever gets the spots they want in that. Ice needs pretty much a win with a bigger total score by about 2,100 points than Guelo does, which isn't going to be easy, but after that performance in the Ukraine, maybe he does still have a little bit of a chance to stay in Division 2. And yeah, Ordboka LCN is a little bit closer. Ordboka, of course, massive total score advantage, so LCN would need to get past him in the table to make it into 8th. But yeah, we'll see. It's still going to be an interesting final week.
Definitely, especially as we look at these fixtures. These matchups are really tasty. Snorlax versus Shumi Obosa at the top of the table. Except, if we kind of rule out a perfect game, these two will pretty much be fighting it out for that top spot. And so they both are probably looking at automatic promotion into Division 1, but it could be who goes out on the first place. It's up for grabs. Yeah, and Calamity mentioned that Ice and Guelo have to fight it out there for that last automatic relegation spot, and they're going to have a very hard week to do it. Bombadil against two Americans there. Barry Fisher. Oh, sorry. Guelo's the American. Barry Fisher Bear and Renata.
Yeah, and not only are Guilo and Barry Guilo and Ice in competition for those bottom spots, but their direct opponents are actually in competition with each other as well, which is pretty interesting for this matchup. So both sides of it are going to have a lot to play for two different reasons, but both against, I guess, their equal opponent, so to speak. So that's two particularly interesting matchups in the context of where we're at with the table.
Yeah, and also American Derby there, World Clyde versus LCN.
Yeah, it's always fun to see national derbies, whenever you get the chance. A little bit of extra pride goes into it, sure, to see if you can top your countrymen. But overall, too, looking at where they are in the scope of the season, it should still be a pretty good match as well. Maybe LCN has a little bit more to play for in the sense that Clyde can still make that mathematical push for that promotion spot, but it would depend on some total scores going his way. So a little bit tougher, but either way, hope they both put up a good performance.
Yeah, Calamity, we could not have asked for better matchups in the final week, given how this table played out, in the sense that I think everybody has something to play for here in terms of just trying to either get out of relegation or secure themselves in a secure spot in the playoffs or something like that.
Yeah, Max doesn't really have much, but he's got the red carded match.
The red carded match,
so
yeah, it's true.
That's also probably the ideal outcome of that one. And yeah, the other matches are pretty interesting. Of course, Snorlax, Shumi, technically, if they just probably if Shumi just wins and Snorlax doesn't drop too many points, then both of them would kind of be safe. But yeah, Shumi probably needs 2 points to really feel secure there. And we'll see if he can manage to do that, because Renata and Barry, as we said, against Ice and Guelo, while those two both still have a lot to fight for from their form this season so far and some of their performances, Renata and Barry do go into those games as the favorites. So it'll be a difficult challenge for them, but on a world map, there's always a chance. And if they can, if Guelo can get 1 point, he's essentially safe, and Ice needs a win. And yeah, against Barry, we'll see. I guess Barry doesn't necessarily have to get a win there to at least stay in the promotion playoffs. So yeah, interesting game. And then Clyde against LCN, probably not as interesting as it may look when you look at the table, since yeah, Clyde pretty much only a mathematical chance anymore, not a very realistic one to get into the promotion playoffs. And LCN has the problem that Ordboka plays against Zotomo, so that's probably going to be 3 points for him essentially. So LCN would need kind of like a perfect score, and even then he could only match Wordboka, and he's so many points behind in total score that I just can't really see that happening.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, let's shift over then to Division 3 and their results in Ukraine. And well, our red carded players are up against each other, which meant that everything was an interesting matchup. But Pashtek decided not to play. But other than that, you can see from these total scores, this seed must have been a lot harder, with Paulinho and Armand, the only two breaking 20,000 Bombadil.
Absolutely. And I think it is a very nice coincidence to the scheduling that we did happen to have our two red carded players match up this late into the season. I think sometimes, even though the points are distributed equally among everyone throughout, it is, I think, at different points in the season where you're carrying momentum, sometimes nicer than other points in the season to pick up those free points if you're playing against the red carded players. So with that said, I think it's always nice to see that happen. And for Dan Freckles as well, that is a really fortuitous free win, all things considered, because it's a good score. 16,000 is, I think, nothing to be ashamed of on a map that's as difficult as this, and a seed that's as hard as this. So grabbing those 3 points is still pretty important, though, especially how close that position is with the promotion playoff battle at the moment. So other than that, though, like you said, a much wider variety of scores, which is always good to see from an entertainment perspective, just because you do get a lot more diversity in results. But mostly impressed with Paulinho in particular and Armand picking up those 20,000, 21,000 points respectively, because that does go a long way, at least on a map of this caliber, being able to pick up that.
Yeah, I mean, Armand has been pretty much at the top of the Division 3 table the entire season, Calamity, but Paulinho kind of hovering there around the relegation sort of spot for a while. That's a very nice win against WTF, who is also in second place in the table, actually.
Yeah, definitely a very nice performance from him there. And I mean, technically Romania is, let me just check that before I say something stupid. No, it is a neighbor country of the Ukraine. So maybe a little bit of an advantage there, but I guess Croatia is also not too far away, actually. So who knows? But yeah, very good score from him. WTF actually with a decent score as well. I mean, 17k isn't too bad on a seed where I think I got like, on the Division 2 seed, I got like 18k or something like that. On the Division 3 seed, I got like 9k. Of course, don't try to mix, of course, and obviously. Of course, without any practice or anything like that, but still, that just shows how much more difficult the Division 3 seed was. And WTF does pick up a bonus point for that. So does Seppo, actually, even with his 15k against Amor, obviously helped by the fact that, we've already got 2 red carded players, and then Pastek forgot to play, so we're already most of the competition eliminated out of this week to fight for those bonus points. But with Closed and Hugo also both having pretty low scores there, it just makes it that much easier to grab one of those bonus points for the top 50% of the scores. Closed and Hugo, pretty important win for Hugo there, in the sense that it at least assures him his place in Division 3 now. Whereas for Closed, he would have really, I'm not going to say he needed that win, but that would have been probably the easiest way into the promotion playoff there if you look at Hugo's score. So a bit unfortunate for him. And then Budbat also with a surprisingly low score. He's been having a pretty good season, so just 12.9k against Steel the Snick, who put up, again, a pretty good score. He always likes to just, I don't know how to really say that in English, but he likes to just, say he's the underdog and he's not expecting anything, and, and for that, he's been pretty high up in the table. And yeah, other than that, Freckles probably a decent score, but yeah, as we said, probably happy that Pastek didn't manage to play this week.
Yeah, very nice win though for Hugo, who probably with the second lowest score, apart from Pastek, obviously, who didn't play, was probably not looking forward to the results, but definitely was a bit surprised there when he saw that one come out his way. But again, we're in towards the end of the season, and if we look at this table, not a whole lot has changed. Closed with that unfortunate loss does drop out of fourth place, but still mathematically in it. There is pretty much, well, mathematically at least, those both of those promotion playoff spots are up from grabs between third and sixth place. But relegation is pretty much all but decided here, Bombadil.
Definitely, and I think that really shows the value in Paulinho's win in this past week as well, because now that he picked that up, he's mathematically clear of the relegation zone. So definitely could walk away with that pretty happy. And like you said, all the focus now shifts to those last couple promotion playoff spots, which are still in contention. So going into this final week, it definitely is going to be exciting to see the matches that are involved with that. Again, some of these matches may not be too interesting just on the grounds that there isn't a whole lot to play for mathematically, as you said. But yeah, particularly with them Freckles and Steal the Snick, with the Italian players, right in contention with each other there. It'll be interesting to see how they pan out.
Yeah, Calamity Boobot has a bit of a point advantage going this one. So mathematically he's not safe, but in all practicality he is, especially once we see the fixtures. But he's also got a perfect game in hand against the rest of the field.
Yeah, perfect game isn't the tiebreaker anymore this season. But he's in third place, currently 3 points ahead of fifth. So in a pretty decent position. Total score-wise, he's also about 1,000 points ahead of Steal the Snick. So yeah, I mean, he's got a red card matchup next week. We can already say that. So it doesn't really matter for him. He'll be in... maybe third, maybe second even. WTF doesn't need a point at least against Closed. Otherwise, he is still in danger there. And for that fourth place, though, it could be really, really close. Essentially, fourth all the way down to eighth still have a chance at that spot. We'll see. I don't think it's very realistic for Paulinho to still grab that spot, even if mathematically his chances don't look that bad, because, he's 3 points behind. He's got the better total score. Doesn't sound too bad, but he'd need to overtake essentially 4 people. And for all of those results to go his way seems quite unlikely, even though he is the other player with the red carded match. So his 3 points are at least already guaranteed. His chances would rapidly increase if he could get a perfect score on the IntersectionGuessr map. That would make it a little bit more possible, but even then it's still not looking the most likely. So probably, realistically, we're looking at one of Freckles, Steal the Snick, and Closed to get that fourth spot. And then, obviously relegation is already decided. Relegation playoffs, obviously it's not decided who will get relegated yet. So it'll be Seppo against Pastek in a week's time.
Yeah, if we look at their fixtures coming up, we already mentioned that Boobot and Paulinho are the two with the red card matchups, but you mentioned that fourth place through eighth is kind of mathematically, there's a lot of stuff that could happen there. And it's interesting that none of them play each other. So they have to take on either somebody higher up or lower down in the table if they do want to give themselves the best possible chance of that promotion fight. Bombadil.
The stars have aligned a little bit to at least provide the opportunity for that to happen. So it's fun to see, even if it may be a somewhat unlikely scenario, it's certainly feasible that the 4 people ahead of them all do lose their match, as opposed to, like you said, playing each other. And
somebody has to at least.
Right, and guaranteeing those points. So yeah, it's possible that if all 4 of them were to lose and he's got the free win with the red card, sure. I mean, it's maybe unlikely, but certainly not the most unrealistic thing I've ever heard of. So it'll be all eyes, I think, from his perspective too, on those other 4 matches to see how they pan out.
Yeah, Calamity.
Yeah, as I said, it can still happen, but just by current form, especially when you think as well that Seppo and Pastek don't really have much to play for in that last week against Hugo and Steal the Snick, who both still very much fighting for that promotion spot. It's making it a little bit less likely. But Seppo's had actually a very decent form recently in the last few weeks. Some pretty great scores from him. So maybe for him still, a bit of a better chance there. And I suppose it depends a bit on what Hugo thinks his chances are really like. Of course, with it being IntersectionGuessr, I guess that's the other side of the of the medal there, where while it isn't practice heavy at all, you also can't really do much to improve upon it if you wanted to. So even if he said like, okay, I'm really going to get into that map in the last week, it probably doesn't make too much of a difference. So yeah, very interesting last week. I think looking at these matchups, pretty rough for Freckles in the last week to face Amo. I mean, I suppose that means he hasn't faced him yet, so it's got to come eventually. But probably not the opponent you want to have at this point, where you're in fourth place and have, a point or two on everyone behind you, where you really need to pick up points to stay in those top four. And yeah, I think probably another very interesting matchup is WTF against Closed, because they both still have a lot to play for. WTF needs a point because, as we saw with Bootbot on a red card match and with a better total score, if WTF doesn't pick up a point, then he will be behind Bootbot, at least under the circumstances that Bootbot doesn't lose like 6,000 points in total score on WTF. And that is still a realistic chance. So he does have to put up at least a good game against Closed, and Closed himself, obviously, in that 6th place after just a disappointing week in the Ukraine, also probably has a bit to prove and will want to get back into it and try to get to that 4th spot.
Definitely, indeed. Well, good luck to everybody in the final week for Division 2 and 3. It'll be really interesting to see how those playoff spots shuffle out in that final week. Well, then moving on, we got our promotion, playoff, and relegation battles to look at for Division 4 and 5. So they will be playing this on the IntersectionGuessr map, which is just a world map with intersections. Of course, we'll take a look at Division 4's playoff, promotion playoff slot first. We have Hexalt and Nakiro and Carp and Solar Sensei in this one. So yeah, any calls you want to make here, Bombadil?
Yeah, two interesting games in the sense that we have two national derbies again. Hexalt and Nakiro representing France, and USA being represented by Carpographer and Solar Sensei there. So it's always tough to make a judgment call when it comes to this point of the season when they're so close going into it. Both of these, I think all 4 of these players have definitely earned their spots in the promotion playoffs, so it's not a surprise to see them up there. But on a world map like the IntersectionGuessr, or what is that the world map we're doing this week? Yeah, absolutely. So on a world map like that, in particular, it becomes even more difficult, I think, to really make a difference, because they tend to be less decisive, and the players do tend to put up all relatively decent scores among themselves as it is. So with regards to who's going to be the favorites, I mean, I think on paper, Hexalt's always been putting in some very strong performances, so I would probably edge that a little bit their direction, but at the same time, not seeing too significant difference in it. And Solar Sensei and Carpographer, both very strong players as well. I'd have a hard time to split them, but maybe I'll just say Carpographer just to at least put a gamble and put a decision on one side.
Yeah, Clement, I think I would have said Carp as well a couple weeks ago, but he has been really in a bit of a slump the last few weeks. Definitely leaves that door open for Solar Sensei.
Yeah, Carp started off very well in the season and then dropped off a bit towards the later end. Might just be maps not suiting him that well. And yeah, definitely, he was kind of fighting for that automatic promotion spot throughout most of it. And by the end of the season, he was 8 points behind it. So yeah, definitely dropped off a bit towards the end. He just, I don't think you can call it lucky, but he'd already accrued such a lead that it wasn't really likely that he was going to drop out of the top 3 anymore. Did still finish in second place, comfortably ahead of the people behind him. And I do think that is a very interesting matchup, actually, between Carp and Solar Sensei. I think they're pretty even. Their total score as well has been very close throughout the season. So they could be making it very interesting for that particular playoff game. And on the other hand, Hexalt and Nakiro, I mean, Hexalt's very experienced with these promotion playoffs at this point. He's been here since season 3, and he's always been in them every single week, single season, sorry. So maybe a bit of an experience advantage there for him, whereas Nakiro last season came 7th in Division 4, so no playoffs for him there. But he also has been in the Division 4 promotion playoffs in Season 3, where he lost in the semifinals, similarly to Hexalt last season. So both of them still have a bit to prove from their past failings, I suppose, in the promotion playoffs here. It'll be interesting from the regular season. Both of them actually, even though Hexalt finished above Solosense, they had a little bit of a lower score, a lower total score, as opposed to the other matchup here. So interesting to see there. Hexalt about 4,000 points more, so again, not too big of a difference. And it could be a very close game as well. I feel like, similarly to what Bombadil said, I think Hexalt is the slight favorite, but yeah, on a world map, anything can really happen. You just need one unlucky round, maybe in one of the bigger countries, and suddenly you're just in a bad place.
Yeah, this is a best of 1. So the 2 winners of this will go on to face each other in the best of 3 final on their own map picks, and they will get a chance to be that 3rd promotion spot into Division 3 next season. Well, at the other end of the table, we'll get to my name, unfortunately. We have the relegation, which is a little bit nicer in the sense that only one of these 4 players will be relegated. And we have Dromi versus Treblyha and me up against Wakelock, Bombadil.
Yeah, the thrill of the relegation fight. It certainly will at least get the blood flowing a little bit for sure. Yeah, it's, as far as, who's favorite in all this, it is always the tough decision. You have the highest score coming into this, so I think there's definitely something to be said about that. But with that said, your opponent or Wakelock, excuse me, has a higher score difference, actually a positive score difference, which partially is a reflection of just how the cards shake out during the course of the regular season, right? Sometimes you just maybe don't get the matchup you want on the week you want and how it works out. But I do think that, both of you are very strong players. I'd probably give you the edge a little bit on this one, or at least I think you probably yourself expect to be able to pull out a good enough performance to get through the next round. And then between Dromi and Treblyha, Treblyha has the better score going into it, so I think there's a little bit of favor with that as well as a better score difference. Although even then, through the regular season, tied on actual points in their respective divisions as well. So I think that's going to be a very close matchup, and I think it's hard to call a favorite, but maybe Treblyha just based on the total score.
Yeah, it is interesting to point out that Treblyha probably was the most unlucky player in Division 4 this season to see her name down there. And me and Wakelock both do have perfect games. So that may be interesting if either one of us can be able to pick that up on this world map, Calamity.
Yeah, and you do have to keep in mind with Dromi there that his total score is impacted by the 1 week he missed. So if he hadn't missed that 1 week, which was Idaho, then it would potentially be a lot more in line with all of the others. So for his match against Treblyha, I think it could be very close. Dromi has had the by far least aces out of everyone in this season, actually. I mean, even Soviet, who's been red carded since week 8. Well, I guess he only missed 3 games actually through that. Obviously the 2 cards as well. Has 3 more aces than Dromi does. So maybe that's a bit of a weakness of his, which could be impactful in IntersectionGuessr, although probably less so than it would be on most other maps. And yeah, so that's a pretty close one, tough to call. I think still that Dromi might be like a slight favorite, but again on a world map and down here, very, very difficult to make any calls, because like one of the main differences between the sort of upper division players and the lower division players is a consistency throughout the rounds. So, where you could say in a Division 1 playoff game, probably like no one's going to drop a lot of points in any of the rounds unless there's like a really big mistake somewhere. Whereas down here, it's quite likely that there'll be one round in there, maybe in a country someone will not be that comfortable in, and points will be dropped. And we'll just have to see who will drop more of them. And for your game against Wakelock, I do think that, Wakelock always with his one good game a season. He's already had that this season. So maybe not gonna be space for another one. But yeah, I think as Bombadil said, total score is pretty close, so could be a very open game as well. And important as well, just for so everyone is on the same page there, that it is the losers who will advance to the relegation playoff finals. So essentially, if you win this one, you're safe, and if you don't, then you have one more chance to save yourself from Division 5 next week.
Very nice. Well, moving over to Division 5 and their promotion battle, we have Artificial up against Jack ES and Danny Blondes against Ollie here, Bombadil. Yeah, Danny Blondes has been in the competition for a while. It's great to see him up there, get the chance for promotion. And is this Artificial's first season?
Yes.
I know, yeah, so Jack and Artificial in their first seasons looking for promotion as well.
Yeah, it's really impressive and encouraging to see people jump in, and in that first season be able to put in a good performance and, show their potential and show their skill level as well where they're at. So I think well done for them to being up there. And Artificial in particular, had a really strong season. Through I was in the same division as well, playing against these guys, and a little unlucky to even be in the playoff contention as opposed to winning the division against Xander, because it did come down to essentially the last week. But unlucky to lose out, but still it was Xander's a good opponent too, so it's not anything to scoff at for ending up there for sure. So I would actually favor Artificial a little bit in this against Jack, as both them first time players, like you said, a little bit of unknowns coming into it in terms of how they're going to perform under this. But based on, I think, the overall course of the season and how Artificial was very much staying up there at the top, 1 and 2 positions throughout. I would give him the edge for that for sure. And then between Ollie and Danny Blondes, played against them before as well in different competitions, and both very strong players too. Similar total scores, and I think that actually reflects their performance through the season as well. Pretty consistent, with respect to the division too. So I think that's one's more of a coin toss, especially on a global map, as we've been discussing so far. So I'd say maybe give Ollie the slight edge, but I wouldn't be shocked to see either of them pull through.
Yeah, it's probably a bit unfortunate for Jack to go up against Artificial, who was looking to have that automatic promotion spot all sealed up until that final week, Calamity.
Yeah, I guess. As we said, I think both of those matches aren't too far apart. Yeah, Artificial just losing out on that automatic spot in the last week. But a loss is a loss. It doesn't really matter when you get it within a season. Maybe just a bit, unfortunate for your self-confidence potentially, where you could be like, oh, I was almost already there and now I have to still play this, and it might impact you mentally a bit. And on the other hand, Jack had a pretty rough start to the season where he's not had the best results. Essentially, started off with a pretty hard loss against Sheldon. Did then come back with quite a few wins after that. But yeah, I think that is a relatively even game, to be honest. And Danny Blondes against Ollie as well. I mean, Ollie's been in the promotion playoff last season, also lost in the semifinals, and Danny Blondes has been there in season 3, where he lost in the semifinals too. So both have experience with this. Danny Blondes has one more season of experience in Reddit League in general. He's been here since season 3, whereas Ollie just joined last season. So maybe a little bit more there. And Danny Blondes has kind of most stayed in my mind with inconsistency. Like always at the start of the season, you kind of look at the division and you go, well, he should be up there. And then he's always kind of like there in sort of that 2nd to 4th, just not really challenging for the automatic promotion spot, just a bit too inconsistent. And well, so far it's been his downfall, I suppose, in that sense, and hasn't made him get promoted just yet. And he does have yet another chance this season in the playoffs again. And yeah, Ollie, pretty decent season, but for both of the divisions actually, it wasn't particularly close. When you look at the gap between 3rd and 4th, so they did have quite a bit of time, at least, to sort of mentally prepare themselves to be in this position. So we'll see how they're handling it.
Very nice. Well, our final playoff is the Division 5 relegation playoff, and Soundbite and Paranoid Android in that first semifinal versus Coal Miner or Penguin, and Arno No No in the other one. I think these are I think Penguin and Arno No are brand new. Paranoid was here last season, and Soundbite is a returner. He took one season. He didn't qualify again, but this is his second official season in Reddit League. So kind of experienced matchup versus the two rookies, Bombadil.
Yeah, and unfortunate for them to end up in the relegation playoffs as it is, because they really were only, for the most part, a couple points off the safe positions above it, and in Division 5 as well, since there is the 3 guaranteed relegation spots. They finished mid-table essentially. It really, I think they did very well over the course of the season, and unlucky to be in the position with a fight for it. Considering finishing 6th and 7th overall is not a bad shout with the level of competition. But as you mentioned, yeah, it's gonna be a close one between them. Their total scores are pretty even, and on a global map, like we continue to talk about, they've all shown the capacity to be able to put out good scores in those situations. And, probably being in Division 5, over the course of the season, you probably do see a wider array of results through kind of the different countries that we visit. Some are easier than others, some harder than others. But on this one, I would expect to see relatively solid scores. More than anything else, not a great difference between them all. I could see the situations where this is separated by just a couple thousand points on both ends of it. So I wouldn't be shocked if we do end up in that kind of scenario. But, as far as who's going to go through, like you said, Paranoid Android has that experience from, previous seasons in this. So maybe that'll help have the edge in terms of keeping nerves in these knockout scenarios where it's a must-win match. So maybe leaning that way, but again, you can see it going both ways. And with Penguin and Arno No No, yeah, that's a tough call too. Yeah, maybe give it to Arno No just based on the number of aces, the total scores, the score difference, being quite a bit higher through the season as well, shows, I think, or reflects that performance that they had and the level of it. So maybe a slight edge there, but yeah, we'll see how it turns out. I think it could go either way.
Yeah, Arno No No, Calamity, the only one with a perfect game, definitely the strongest stats of all of them. And we have casted Soundbite a few times this season, and he has looked a whole lot better than his last time around. So perhaps he is on good form enough to stay around this season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these have all been players that have done pretty decently this season. I think the kind of like throughout the season, the overall quality always goes up a bit, and we've reached a point this season as well where the quality in Division 5 is consistently good throughout the whole division as well, and you don't really have players anymore who are like, they're not quite good enough for that division yet. So very interesting matches here too. I've just looked at the performances on the world maps a bit for Soundbite and Paranoid, and they've both done pretty well so far this season. Soundbite and had one of the best scores on the hard world map actually, and also both of them very close to the perfect game in the Volvo dealerships map, just 1 and 2 points away from that respectively. Soundbite also did decently on the hard world, not quite as good as I think I said that the wrong way around. Paranoid did quite decently on the hard world, not quite as good as Soundbite, but still a decent score there. And if you look at the other game, Arno No No and Penguin, decent score on a hard world as well. He actually played Soundbite in that game as for a little fun thing there, which Soundbite won by about 400 points. Arno No actually struggling with that hard world map, and in week 3 on a Volvo dealership though, nothing much between them. I mean, that was the week where Division 4 essentially had everyone on 24.9k plus except for Geoguessr. So yeah, looking at those, maybe, I don't know, on a hard world, a bit struggling. So if there is some difficult locations on the IntersectionGuessr map, then maybe Penguin is a little bit of a favorite there. But Soundbite against Paranoid, very close game, I think, and could really go either way. Paranoid did have the lowest total score out of those four in the regular season, with Anono having the highest one. So I don't know. Maybe that'll have a bit of an impact there in terms of aces. They're not massively far apart. So yeah, I think could be some pretty interesting and close matchups.
Yeah, very nice. Well, good luck to everybody in those promotion and relegation playoffs. Before we get to our map, let's not forget about Reddit League next. I did forget about it last week, so let's not do it 2 weeks in a row. Yeah, as the scores in Ukraine show, 3 minutes, not the easiest thing to do, Calamity. But those top three automatic kind of, I don't know, we call them automatic promotion, qualification spots, there we go, pretty much set already with only 1 more week to go.
Yeah, I mean, there is still like 8,000 points between third and fourth is something that you could potentially get, but, looking at their performances so far this season, it seems kind of unlikely in all of the maps that weren't too difficult. There were some differences, and there were a couple thousand points apart, but there hasn't really been a map yet where you could really see like an 8,000 point swing. I mean, Poland had it, but apart from that, essentially they've been pretty even throughout. So, not in the best position there to maybe make a late charge, especially because on IntersectionGuessr they're probably not expecting to drop too many points. Obviously, for these players with a bit of a lack of experience on 3 minute rounds, it can always happen that you just get something substantially wrong and go like, I don't know, especially in countries like South America, just end up in a very wrong place. But that's just one round then, and need more of them. But maybe there is still a little bit of a chance. And yeah, in Ukraine, it was kind of expected that we wouldn't see the highest of scores here. But they're still important, even if it's just, the difference between like 5,000 and 9,000 points. That's still a 4,000 point gap in between them and could make the difference at the end of the season.
Very nice. Well, yeah, we've been talking about it throughout the entire show. Our map for the final week of Division 2 and 3 and those playoffs is IntersectionGuessr. It is a world map with the theme that every location is at the meeting of two roads, but those roads can be of any size. And the intersections are from a different map than Google Maps. So you might be an intersection and not see an intersection in the actual game, which of course is always pretty interesting. But yeah, any thoughts on this one, Bombadil?
Yeah, it's a nice twist to it with the OpenStreetMap as opposed to the Google Maps, just to throw the extra curveball in there. But overall, we have been talking about it quite a bit at this point. I do consider world maps like this essentially the great equalizer, so to speak. When we look at some of the maps we played over the course of this season, a lot of times when you have different countries, sometimes a certain country or region is a lot easier in the sense that you expect very high scores for everybody, and sometimes they're just very difficult, and it comes down to a case of who has the most experience on that specific country or who puts the most practice into them. Whereas this one, there's only so much you can really practice up to it. I think it is a good reflection of your general well-rounded skill in Geoguessr overall, and just the ways that you've owned those skills up to this point in your playing career, essentially. So with that in mind, I think it's nice that you get an opportunity to show that off without having to necessarily be at the mercy of did you practice enough, to know all the intricate details of this area, or did the opponent practice more than you, or just have more experience with it. But that is very typical, just with the distinction between the global maps and the more specialized ones. And I think it's good that we have a healthy balance, among them throughout the course of the season, because that really mixes it up and makes you show the most of your skills. So with this particular one in mind, yeah, there isn't too much in terms of specifics you can give, because with such a variety of locations that you're going to get, I think it really is just a test of how well-rounded are you. And at this level too, when we've seen over the course of this competition, just the how high the level of competition continues to rise and the level of skill. So I expect everybody, even from the lower divisions up to the top, to at least be getting the bare minimum of not making massive mistakes. I don't expect players at these levels to be confusing South Africa and Australia, for example. So with a lot of this global size of the map and where it could be, I don't think it's going to lead to a particularly wide volatility in scores. So everybody should be putting in relatively good performances, and it's going to come down to the fine margins of, can you make those pinpoints? Can you really narrow the location down to close enough to where it is, instead of just getting the general region or area where you think it is, because that'll probably make the difference, especially for a lot of these promotion and relegation playoff matches.
Exactly. Yeah, Clement, I think the only real chance for so many big gaps to open up is the countries like Russia, Brazil, maybe Argentina, where I've got the country, but I don't know where, and you pick one side and it's the other, and then that's 1,000, 1,500 points, if not more. So that's really kind of what we're looking at here. So either the very fine margins of, were you able to pinpoint this intersection, or, you know, we were in the middle of nowhere, I got the country, but unfortunately I'm on the wrong side.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned that mostly during the match casts this season, once when we had them. But that is one of the weaknesses of world maps, in my opinion, for these kind of like 1-against-1 competitions, where, you know, it's all well and good if you've got 5, you know, relatively doable rounds, or if you've got a very hard seed, but quite often they do come down to just being 4 relatively easy doable rounds, and then you just have that one round somewhere in the middle of nowhere in a big country that just decides all of it, and the other 4 rounds are essentially meaningless, which I always think is a bit of a shame, because, you know, all the rounds should at least matter to some extent. And if you start off like in Russia and you're on the complete wrong end of the country, then you're already kind of like, well, what am I supposed, if we don't get another round like that, I can't do anything to make up for that loss of points. And on one hand, you could say, well, that's fair. Then you dropped 4,000 points in Russia, you lose. But, you know, it's kind of a bit of a philosophical question, I suppose, in what do you value more? Like, do you value like beating your opponent in 4 of the 5 rounds, or do you value more Geoguessr points? And we still value more Geoguessr points in this. So yeah, I think Bombadil said pretty much most of the things about the map already. It's not too complicated in its theme and everything. Just plenty of locations, so practicing is not going to get you much in terms of like repeats or anything like that. It hasn't been played too often, actually, considering IntersectionGuessr is something that's pretty well known. I'm actually surprised to see it only having been played 1,500 times. I would have expected more, but, you know, I think very suitable map for playoffs here. And yeah, we'll see what the map gives us.
Definitely very nice. We're looking forward to these results on the world map, and those playoffs are always really fascinating to see as well. Well, thank you all for sticking with us through this one. We can't wait to see you next week when we get to the real meat of the matter. We get to the championships in Division 1 as well. I get to find out who is staying in which division. And so we'll catch you all next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.